In the heart of Texas, where the sky meets the earth in an infinite embrace, stories of courage are born every day. But not all are told. Not all are remembered. Frank Thompson's story is different. It is a living testimony that true strength does not reside in youth, but in experience forged in distant battlefields. Born in a small Texan town in the late 40s, Frank was more than just a farmer. He was a veteran who carried the invisible scars of wars that changed the world. Guadalcanal, Vietnam, moments that transform ordinary men into extraordinary warriors. His ranch was more than just land. It was a silent memorial of survival. Each fence, each plot of ground told a story of resilience, of a man who learned that life is not summarized by moments of peace, but by how we face adversity. How many veterans like Frank exist? Silent heroes who fought not for glory, but for a greater ideal. Men who left their youth in distant fields, fighting for a freedom that many will never truly comprehend. Martha, his wife for 45 years, always understood the warrior that resided beneath Frank's calm exterior. She knew that war does not end when you leave the battlefield. For some, like Frank, it is a way of life, an eternal commitment to survival. This is not just another video about a confrontation. It is a tribute, a homage to those who served, to those who continue to serve, even when the world has forgotten them. The invasion of his ranch was not a simple conflict. It was a moment that condensed decades of training, of experience, of pure survival. An instant where a 78-year-old veteran showed that age does not define the warrior. Determination does. Prepare yourself for a story that goes beyond fiction, more real than any action movie. A narrative that shows heroes are not created in Hollywood. They are forged in battlefields, in isolated ranches, in moments where death dances dangerously close. If you believe in stories of courage, if you respect those who served, if you want to understand the true meaning of resistance, keep watching, because Frank Thompson's story is more than a story of confrontation. It is a life lesson. A pre-dawn silence enveloped Frank Thompson's ranch, a vast 300-acre spread in the heart of Texas. At 78, Frank was more than just an elderly farmer. He was a living testament to survival, a Navy veteran who had seen the darkest corners of human conflict. Born in a small Texas town in 1947, Frank Thompson grew up listening to war stories. His father, a World War II veteran, had planted in his young mind the meaning of courage, discipline, and sacrifice. When the Vietnam War broke out, Frank didn't hesitate. He enlisted in the Navy at just 20 years old, determined to serve his country. Guadalcanal was more than a distant memory. It was a living scar on his soul, an experience that fundamentally transformed him. Those Pacific Islands were Frank's true baptism of fire, where boys became men, and men were tested to their most extreme limits. His calloused hands, marked by decades of military service and field work, moved with a precision that defied age. Each movement was calculated. Each gesture carried the discipline of years of military training. The steel blue eyes, as piercing as on the day of his first mission, scanned the horizon with constant vigilance. The Winchester rifle, a silent companion of decades, remained in the corner as a testimony to his journey. It was more than just a weapon, a symbol of resistance, of untold stories, of moments only veterans truly comprehended. The ranch represented more than simple land. It was the result of years of hard work, of reconstruction after years of conflict. Each fence, each plot of land had been conquered with the sweat of his labor and the determination of a veteran who learned to start over. Martha, his wife for 45 years, had been his safe harbor. She understood the silences, the occasional nightmares, the memories that sometimes consumed him. Her love had been the antidote to the invisible wounds of war, a balm for a warrior's soul. The sound of engines broke the morning silence. It wasn't the familiar noise of tractors or local trucks. It was something different, calculated, invasive. 3 dark SUVs approached from the western border of the ranch, synchronized professional movements. They were not common criminals. They were something more dangerous. Frank was no longer the young Marine from Guadalcanal. But his training, his survival instincts remained as sharp as decades ago. Every muscle, every nerve was alert. The invaders didn't know who they were dealing with. They saw only an elderly man. They did not understand that they were facing someone, trained to survive in the most hostile scenarios on the planet. His mind quickly returned to moments in Guadalcanal. The smell of gunpowder, the noise of combat, the sensation of adrenaline mixed with absolute fear. Memories that never completely abandoned him. The Winchester was checked, loaded, ready. His fingers, even aged, perfectly remembered each movement. They were not just reflexes. It was muscle memory built on battlefields. The first rays of sun began to paint the horizon. But a different darkness inhabited Frank's heart. A darkness born of war. A darkness that understood survival. His war companions, those who did not return from the Pacific Islands, seemed to whisper in his memory. John, who died in Guadalcanal. Mike, hit by shrapnel in a bloody combat. Thomas, who was never the same after the horrors of war. Frank remembered each face, each story. They were more than memories. They were a silent responsibility to continue, living, to honor those who sacrificed everything. The invaders continued approaching, 5 armed men, thinking they would face an easy target. They did not know that before them stood a man forged in the most brutal battlefields of history. His Navy training was not just a memory. It was a living reality, a set of reflexes and strategies that never abandoned him. Military discipline ran through his veins like blood, constant and relentless. The invader who first stepped onto his property would make a fatal mistake. Frank Thompson would not be just another victim. This was his land, his home, and he would defend it with the same ferocity with which he defended his country decades ago. War does not end when you leave the battlefield. For some, like Frank Thompson, it is a lifelong commitment to survival, protection, and honor, and that morning, his ranch would become a battlefield once more. The first SUV came to a sudden stop about 200 yards from the main house. Frank watched, motionless, his breathing steady and controlled. Years of military training had taught him that patience was often the most effective weapon. The 5 men who emerged from the vehicles moved with a precision that suggested professional training. They weren't common criminals. Their coordinated movements, tactical positioning, and military-style communication indicated something more organized, more dangerous. Frank recognized the type. He had seen similar movements in Vietnam, in covert operations where the line between official mission and something darker became blurred. These weren't random thugs looking for a quick score. They had a specific purpose, a calculated plan. His mind raced back to Guadalcanal, to moments where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. The Pacific Campaign had been a brutal teacher, showing him that survival wasn't about heroics, but about cold, calculated strategy. The lead invader, a tall man with a tactical vest and a high-powered rifle, signaled to the others. They spread out, creating a perimeter around the ranch house. Classic military approach, clear communication, synchronized movement. Frank's Winchester felt warm in his hands, not from heat, but from the energy of anticipation. Each chamber was loaded, each movement calculated. He wasn't just an old farmer. He was a warrior who had never truly left the battlefield. Martha's photo on the mantel seemed to watch him. She would understand. She had always known the warrior, resided just beneath his calm exterior. Their 45 years of marriage had been built on mutual understanding, on the silent language of veterans who had seen too much. The silence was thick with tension. Years of combat experience told Frank that the most dangerous moments often came in complete quiet. His ears picked up the slightest sounds, the soft crunch of gravel, the almost imperceptible movement of grass, the controlled breathing of approaching men. Each sense was heightened. Years of military training transformed this peaceful ranch into a tactical battlefield in mere seconds. The invaders moved with professional precision, clearly believing they had the element of surprise. They were wrong. Frank knew every inch of this land, every rock, every fence post, every potential point of cover and attack. This was his territory, and he would defend it with the same intensity he had defended his country decades ago. His mind mapped out potential scenarios with lightning speed. Entry points, likely approaches, possible escape routes. The tactical part of his brain, dormant, for years but never truly silent, began to activate with brutal efficiency. The first shot would define everything. Frank knew this from brutal experience. In Guadalcanal, in Vietnam, the first engagement often determined the entire battle's outcome. He had seen too many good men fall because of a single moment's hesitation. Memories of fallen comrades flooded his mind. John, who took a bullet saving 3 men in a single moment of incredible bravery. Mike, whose body was never recovered after a brutal ambush. Thomas, who came home but was never truly whole again. These weren't just memories. They were a responsibility, a promise to continue fighting, to never surrender, to honor those who had sacrificed everything. The invaders were getting closer. 150 yards now. Their movements suggested confidence, a belief that they were in control of the situation. They were fatally mistaken. Frank's fingers, weathered but still strong, wrapped around the Winchester. Each movement was a memory, each breath a calculation. The ranch around him wasn't just land. It was his final battlefield, and he would defend it with everything he had: the tactical vest, the synchronized movements, the high-powered rifles. None of these meant anything compared to the experience of a veteran who had survived the worst of human conflict. As the first invader stepped onto the property line, Frank knew the moment of truth had arrived. Decades of training, years of survival, a lifetime of warrior instincts were about to be tested once more. This was more than just defending a ranch. This was about honoring a promise to those who had fallen, a promise to continue fighting, even when the battlefield had changed. Frank's muscle memory activated with a precision that defied his age. The Winchester felt like an extension of his body, a trusted companion forged through decades of military experience. His steel-blue eyes tracked the invaders' movements, with a calculation born from countless combat missions. The lead intruder, a man in his early 40s with tactical gear and a military-grade assault rifle, seemed unaware of the veteran watching him. His movements were professional, but Frank recognized the subtle mistakes of someone who had trained, but never truly fought. In Guadalcanal, Frank had learned that real combat was nothing like training. It was a dance of survival, where instinct meant more than technique. These men moved like they had studied tactics from a manual, but lacked the raw experience of actual battlefield survival. The ranch around him transformed. What moments ago was a peaceful Texas landscape now became a strategic battlefield. Every fence post, every rock, every small depression in the ground became a potential point of tactical advantage. Frank's mind raced through potential scenarios, entry points, defensive positions, escape routes. The tactical part of his brain, dormant for years but never truly forgotten, began to calculate with brutal efficiency. Memories of his Marine training flooded back. The lessons learned in the brutal Pacific campaigns weren't just techniques, they were a way of survival. Close-quarter combat, strategic positioning, reading the terrain, understanding the enemy's psychology. These invaders didn't know who they were dealing with. They saw an old man on a ranch. They didn't see the warrior who had survived some of the most brutal combat in human history. The first invader stepped fully onto the property line. A fatal mistake. Frank's breathing remained steady. His hands, though aged, didn't show a hint of tremor. Years of military discipline had taught him that fear was a luxury no soldier could afford. The morning light began to change, casting long shadows across the Texas landscape. A hawk circled overhead, a silent witness to the drama about to unfold. Each breath was a calculation, each moment a potential turning point. His mind drifted momentarily to Martha. She would understand. She had always known the warrior that lived beneath his calm exterior. Their 45 years together had been a testament to survival, to endurance. The invaders were spreading out, attempting to create a tactical perimeter. Classic military approach, but flawed. They didn't know the terrain. They didn't understand that. Every inch of this ranch was a potential trap. Frank remembered his first sergeant's words from decades ago. A Marine is always ready. A Marine never surrenders. Those words echoed in his mind now, as clear as they were in 1942. The scars on his body told stories most people would never understand. A fragment wound from Guadalcanal. A knife scar from a close encounter with a Japanese soldier. Burn marks from a burning tank. Each mark was a memory, a testament to survival. His military jacket, carefully preserved in a cedar chest, held medals that represented more than just combat achievements. They were memories of brothers lost, of moments that defined a generation. The Silver Star sat proudly, a reminder of a day when he saved an entire platoon against impossible odds. The ranch had been his healing ground. After years of war, this land became his sanctuary. Every fence post he built, every cow he raised, was an act of reconstruction, rebuilding a life shattered by conflict. Now, facing these intruders, Frank felt something familiar. The same alertness that kept him alive in the Pacific was awakening. His body might be older, but his spirit remained unbroken. The morning light continued to spread, casting long shadows across the Texas landscape. A hawk circled overhead, a silent witness to the drama about to unfold. Frank Thompson was ready. Whatever came next would be met with the same courage he showed decades ago on distant island battlefields. The invasion had begun. Frank's muscles coiled like steel springs, decades of military training transforming the quiet ranch into a potential battlefield. The first invader who crossed the property line would learn a brutal lesson about underestimating a veteran. His mind was a tactical computer, processing every detail. The position of each intruder, the potential cover points, the angles of approach. Years of Pacific Campaign survival had etched these skills into his very DNA. The Winchester felt alive in his hands, not just a weapon, but an extension of his will. Each movement calculated, each breath controlled. The ranch around him was no longer a peaceful sanctuary. It was a combat zone. The invaders moved with what they believed was professional precision. But Frank saw the flaws, the slight hesitations, the marginally uncoordinated movements. These were not true combat veterans. These were pretenders. Memories of Guadalcanal flooded back. The humid jungles, the constant tension, the moments where life and death balanced on a razor's edge. Those experiences had taught him more than any military manual could ever explain. His ears picked up the smallest sounds, the crunch of gravel, the subtle shifting of tactical gear, the controlled breathing of men who believed they had the advantage. They were wrong. Martha's photograph watched from inside the house. She would understand. She had always known the warrior that lived beneath his calm exterior. Their 45 years together had been a testament to survival, to endurance. The first invader took another step, a fatal mistake. Frank's mind was already 3 moves ahead, not just reacting, but anticipating, planning, strategizing. The lessons learned in the most brutal combat zones of the Pacific were about to be demonstrated. Each scar on his body told a story. Each memory was a weapon more powerful than any rifle. The invaders didn't just face an old man, they faced a living legend of survival. His training from decades ago surged through his veins. The precision of a Marine. The strategic thinking of a veteran who had seen the worst of human conflict. Every muscle, every sense was now a weapon. The Pacific campaigns had been brutal teachers. Guadalcanal wasn't just a memory, it was a lived experience that had transformed boys into men and men into warriors. Frank had survived where many had fallen. His fingers, though aged, remembered every technique, every close-quarter combat move, every survival strategy learned in the most hostile environments imaginable. These weren't just skills, they were survival itself. The invaders continued their approach, believing they held the tactical advantage. They didn't understand that true combat experience couldn't be learned from manuals or weekend training courses. Frank's breathing remained steady, his heart rate controlled. Years of military discipline had taught him that emotional control was the most powerful weapon in any confrontation. The morning light continued to change, casting long shadows across the Texas landscape. But a different kind of darkness resided in Frank's heart. A darkness born of war, of survival, of memories that would never truly fade. Each moment was a calculation. Each breath, a potential turning point. The ranch had transformed from a peaceful sanctuary to a battlefield, and Frank Thompson was ready. He thought of his fallen comrades, those who never returned from the Pacific, those who gave everything in service of their country. Their memory was not just a remembrance, it was a sacred promise of survival. The invaders were about to learn a brutal lesson about underestimating a veteran. This was more than a defense. This was a statement, a declaration that age does not diminish the warrior spirit. Frank Thompson was ready. Whatever came next would be met with the same courage he showed decades ago on distant island battlefields. The confrontation was about to begin. The first shot rang out with a precision that belied Frank's age. Years of military training condensed into a single calculated movement. The Winchester spoke not just with sound, but with decades of combat experience. The invader who took the first round never saw it coming. One moment advancing, the next falling backwards. A testament to Frank's undiminished marksmanship. Decades might have passed since Guadalcanal, but some skills never truly fade. Frank's body moved with a fluidity that contradicted his 78 years. Each motion was calculated, each breath a strategic decision. The ranch transformed from a peaceful Texas landscape into a battlefield more familiar to him than any peaceful moment. The remaining invaders quickly realized this was no ordinary confrontation. Their tactical approach, carefully planned in some distant briefing room, was falling apart in real time. Frank Thompson was not just defending his property, he was teaching a brutal lesson in survival. Memories of the Pacific campaigns flooded his consciousness. The humid jungles of Guadalcanal, the constant tension of never knowing if the next moment would be your last. Those experiences hadn't just trained him, they had fundamentally transformed him into a survivor. His military training from decades, ego surged through his veins like an electric current. Position, cover, movement, timing. Each principle learned in the most brutal combat zones of World War II was now being applied to this unexpected battlefield. The Winchester was more than a weapon. It was a connection to his past, to his fallen comrades, to every moment of survival he had experienced. Each round fired was a tribute to those who had fallen, those who had never returned home. The invaders attempted to regroup, to find a tactical advantage. But Frank had already mapped out every possible scenario, every potential movement, every potential cover point. They were playing a game where he knew every rule, every potential outcome. Martha's memory seemed to watch over him. She had always understood the warrior that lived beneath his calm exterior. Their 45 years together had been a testament to survival, to endurance, to the unbreakable spirit of those who had seen the worst of human conflict. His mind raced through potential scenarios, always 3 steps ahead of his opponents. This wasn't just about defending his ranch. This was about honoring a lifetime of service, of survival, of commitment to something larger than himself. The sound of gunfire mixed with the early morning Texas landscape. Birds scattered, dust rose, but Frank remained focused, a living embodiment of military precision and survival instinct. Each movement was a calculation, each breath a potential turning point. The ranch had transformed from a peaceful sanctuary to a battlefield, and Frank Thompson was its sole, determined defender. The invaders were learning a brutal lesson about underestimating a veteran. Age had not diminished his skills. It had refined them, sharpened them, made them more lethal than ever before. His thoughts drifted momentarily to his fallen comrades, those who never returned from the Pacific, those who gave everything in service of their country. Their memory was not just a remembrance. It was a sacred promise of survival. Frank's tactical mind processed information faster than his opponents could react. Cover points, potential escape routes, angles of attack. Each consideration was a weapon more powerful than any rifle. The morning light continued to change, casting long shadows across the landscape. But a different kind of darkness resided in Frank's heart. A darkness born of war, of survival, of memories that would never truly fade. This was more than a defense. This was a statement, a declaration that the warrior spirit knows no age, no limitation. That true survival is not about physical strength, but about mental resilience. The remaining invaders were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Frank Thompson was not just defending his property. He was defending a lifetime of honor, of service, of unwavering commitment. Each moment was a testament to survival, each movement a declaration of indomitable spirit. The ranch had become more than land. It was a battlefield, and Frank was its sole, unyielding defender. The confrontation was far from over, and Frank Thompson was just getting started. Frank Thompson's story doesn't end here. It's a powerful reminder that true heroism isn't found in muscles or youth, but in experience, determination, and an unbreakable spirit. A veteran like Frank is more than just a man. He is a living testimony of courage, resilience, and sacrifice. Each scar, each memory tells a story of survival that goes beyond the battlefield. How many veterans like Frank are out there? Untold stories of bravery, moments where the line between life and death is thinner than a razor's edge. This video is not just about a confrontation. It's about honor. It's about respect. It's about those who served and continue to serve, even when the world has forgotten them. If you were moved by this story, you need to know more. Real stories of veterans who defied death, who protected their homes, who kept the flame of freedom alive. Subscribe to the channel. Share these stories. Honor those who gave everything for our country. Veterans like Frank Thompson are not just survivors. They are silent heroes who deserve to be remembered. The next video, more real stories of courage and survival await you.